These are a series of propaganda posters made during World War II, which we'll go over a little bit more in class. Um, Propaganda made both for you to support the war effort, for you to give money, sometimes even give books, for you not to talk about what was going on during the war or where you knew your family was stationed. So we'll talk about these propaganda efforts a little more during class. Um, During wartime in the United States, 30 million people moved from the countries to the cities, or from different cities to other cities to look for jobs or to go to where the jobs were. Rationing was a huge part of everybody's life. They rationed everything from oil, food, rubber, metal, nylon, silk. Everything was rationed, including even the fat from bacon grease and meat drippings was used. They can use that for bombs, and we'll look at a little cartoon about that. So this lady's making a pledge that she will not. You got stamps, ration stamps. You can only buy a certain amount of meat per week. When you ran out of your stamps to buy meat, you were done. So you had to really make your meals stretch. Victory gardens were planted again, just like during World War One. They planted gardens in parks. They used city property to make public gardens so people could grow food, or you just use your backyard. Blackouts tested war readiness. They would put blackout curtains in their house, turn off all the lights, so that the enemy, if it did reach our shores, could not find anything below them to bomb because everything was blacked out. Next slide. Oh wait, and recycling, looks like we do now. Conserving materials was a big way of life. I like this little Hitler recycling poster. All right, moving on. Now, America would send out about, or would have to, in the Atlantic against the Germans, first have to get to the war. To do that, they'd have to get past the U-boats. Germans would send out 20 plus U-boats together. They would call them wolf packs to attack anything that was moving in the Atlantic. And in northern Africa, again, they're looking for resources. Germany is, particular oil. In northern Africa, maybe the greatest German general of all time, General Rommel, who was known as the Desert Fox, was pushing deep in the North Africa, taking more and more territory and more resources to fight the war. Moving on. In Africa, once we were able to overcome the wolf pack, we had submarine hunting ships and radar now to find them, and we'd also use planes to bomb them. The English pushed from the eastern side of Africa. The Americans landed in the west and pushed from the west, and we squeezed the Germans out of Africa, led by, for the English, General Montgomery, or Monty as they called him, and for America, future President General Eisenhower. The two allies met in the middle of Africa and secured Africa. From then, they had to figure out how they're going to jump from Africa to Europe to begin to slowly move north into Europe and push the Germans out. And that first was done, to the next slide, by invading Italy. They invaded Italy down in the south. This invasion was led by General George Patton. When they reached Rome, they arrested Mussolini, but the Germans freed him and moved him north. Eventually, the Americans moved up the spine of Italy, the boot of Italy. They finally broke through German lines in about halfway through Italy, and eventually all of Sicily and Italy was taken over by the Allies and liberated. And at this time, the Italians were so sick and tired of war that they treated the Americans as liberators. And in fact, after Mussolini was caught and shot by Italians when he was trying to get out of Italy, the new government Italy, joined the Allies and declared war on Germany. And that's the end of this lecture. Only 2 lectures this time. We'll talk in class about several parts of this lecture. And more so, we will talk about fighting the war and how bloody it was in Europe and the Holocaust once we found out what was going on with Germans and gypsies and communists and Catholics in Europe. We'll talk about all that next class.